Commission for February 2nd, 2023 to order. Is Jody here?
No, she'll be absent from today.
I'll ask Carol, would you mind reading the, or calling the roll call?
Chairman Robert Turgill,
Present.
Vice Chairman Carol Wagoner, I'm present. Secretary Jody Rich is absent. And Member Brian Lewis,
Present.
Member Tim Spiegelglass,
Present.
and Member Daniel Rosenberg.
Present.
We have one position vacant.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Let it also be known that City Council member Missy Waldman, our City Council liaison, is in attendance, as well as Carlos Trejo, the Director of the Planning of Olivet's Planning and Community Development Department, Don Doty, Senior Planner. Bridget is not here. She's, yeah. As
Yeah,
well as,
later those.
yes, yeah. Yeah, exactly. She moved on to another position outside the city of Olivet. So we're sad to see her go. And then last but not least, Barb Sondag, our city manager, is in attendance. Carlos, did I miss anyone?
No, sir. I think you got everybody covered.
Okay, good.
Just a reminder, everyone, to make sure to speak on the mics. It is very sensitive and some of the audio is really hard to catch if you're too far. So.
Okay, it looks like we have a lot of people who've been here before. So I just wanted to remind everybody kind of the procedures, how we kind of operate things. We go through agenda items one by one. And during those agenda items, there'll be a staff report to go over it, explain the petition, kind of go over their findings. There'll be a time for commission members to discuss with staff. Then at that time, we generally bring on the petitioner to kind of review things. And then at that point, we bring on public comments that are related to that agenda item. We also, at the beginning of each meeting, we do have public comments for items that are not on the agenda item. For anybody, the public that does come up to speak to the podium, we do request, or we do require that you state your name and address for the record. And then we do have to limit the time to no more than 3 minutes to kind of be respectful for everybody's time and also just to make sure these meetings don't go on, to the wee hours. So we've had a lot of those. So we want to try to kind of minimize that as much as we can. And one reminder too is if there's been a comment or an issue that's been stated in the past, that's been discussed here, that means we've heard it, and we want to just try to prevent, a lot of people coming up and repeating the same comments, because we are listening. But if we don't acknowledge it and we don't say it, feel free to make sure you kind of have that point added, just to make sure. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, if there's people that are online and you want to have have a public comment, there's usually a icon at the bottom where you can raise your hand. And if you click on that, then it'll allow us to elevate you up to the speaker
To
level.
bring you to yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But we do ask you to make sure that you take off or turn on your video as well as the microphone. It's a little tricky, so look out for it. There are icons that are there. So, and it usually defaults to no video and no sound. So it takes some time. So make sure you take a look at that. Okay, we'll try to guide you as much as we can. Okay, that being said, this is an opportunity for public comments that are for items that are not on the agenda item. Is there anybody out in the audience that has a public comment that would like to discuss? Seeing none. Carlos, do we have anybody online?
If anybody online would like to speak before the commission regarding a non-agenda item, again, if you can click the raise your hand icon located at the lower center of your Zoom screen. And Chairman, I do have two comments if
Please.
the opportunity permits. First, encourage everybody to stay connected with the city of Olivet by signing up on our email list service. There's other social media opportunities that the city works hard to make sure that information is placed out there, and it's usually the best bet in there. But we do encourage residents to sign up, and information is up here on the monitor, and anybody at the city can help you or assist you if there's any questions regarding that. And second, and just as important, Wednesday, February 8th, Ms. Doty, our senior planner, along with the comprehensive plan consultants, Chalky Consulting, will be guests at the Coffee at the Mayor at 8:45 a.m. Urge everyone to attend, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about this during this review process, the difference between principles and values, and the comprehensive plan is really where the community values are kind of developed, set, and then they guide us on how we create our codes and regulations. And this is an opportunity since 2006 for the community to get back involved and help us develop our values and our vision for the city for the next 20 years. And there'll be multiple opportunities throughout the spring and the summer. But again, the Coffee of the Mayor is recorded. If you can attend, that'd be great. Ms. Doty has some great data regarding of who we are. You know, what is the composition of our community? Has it changed since back in 2006? And I look forward to this process. It's exciting. This is my second one in this community, and it's an honor. And it's a great process to engage with the residents. So again, that is Wednesday, 8:45 a.m., February 8th, Coffee with the Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good. That being said, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is old business. Item A, 9270 Olive Boulevard, Sunrise Dispensary. Carlos?
Chairman, I'm going to go over the petition that's been submitted for a medical and adult use recreational dispensary at the southeast corner of Dolores Avenue and Olive Boulevard. The petition or permit application has been submitted to convert the existing building into a dispensary. The representatives are here. It's Agrigenesis, who operate, I believe, 6 other dispensaries throughout the state of the Missouri, if not 5. And then they provide the full gamut of services in the cannabis industry. In there, they have placed under contract this property. It is zoned what we call COR, commercial office retail, in there, and it's served as an office building, for the most part, owner occupied for quite some time. In there, but before going through that, I want to talk about the process. A lot of people were here at the last meeting, and and are getting engaged with the community process and how the government review works, and what this commission role is, and then what is that of the council, and then as citizens, what are your opportunities to provide input in there. So if you can bear with me, I'm going to go over some of these items and then open it up back to the commission. Kind of note the what we heard and listened to from the residents at our January meeting. Make sure that I collected the comments from the commission, and then the goal would be, if we have the set of items along with the regulations we have to work in, we'll roll up our sleeves and start working with the petitioner to see how we can best address the issues, concerns, and compliance with the city's rules and regulations. First, again, this is the site located on the south side of Olive Boulevard, right next to Dolores. It's adjacent to the Shops of Price Crossing. It is currently vacant right now. Turek, I always knew it as a Turek building. In the 20 years that I've been here, they've occupied that building and they still own it. I think they just didn't make it through the COVID process or just had too much space. They've had up to 8 employees working at their peak back in 2020, and based on their business license. And then the other side of the building has had a change of various users. Most recently, 2 different healthcare companies. They've employed 5 people, but on staff, but then they provided a lot of home health services at the site. So it's been a split building in there. And again, it is currently vacant, and a sign was put up for its lease or in there, and now it's under contract again by Agrigenesis. So what's the process on this? Well, the petition gets submitted, we commence the review. First thing we look at is, are the grounds appropriate based on the city's zoning map? And it is zoned what we call commercial office retail. And under that zoning designation, commercial office retail, the use is permitted, but it's subject to what we call a special permit. I'll go over that in a second, because it does require a greater degree of detail and scrutiny in its process. So what's the role of this body here, the commission? It is to review and forward a recommendation to the city council within 128 days. The commission is not the approving body for this petition, but they serve as an advisory role to the council to review, analyze, and make recommendations to the council about whether this use has mitigated or is it appropriate for its surroundings or its location. It's the role of the council to hold a public hearing during their review process and to ultimately act on the petition. So I just wanted to note the distinctions between there and there.
Carlos,
Yes.
I just want to clarify, when you say the appropriateness of the site, you're talking from a planning standpoint.
Correct. And we'll
And
get
from
into
a
that in
building layout or
Correct.
kind of
The
things.
commission has some defined components that it has to be review within, and I'll go over those
Right.
and identify.
And I just wanted to clarify that
Mhm.
because it puts us in a tricky position too, where we can't go through and decide the appropriateness of an establishment like this, especially, that's already been, declared legal in the state of Missouri.
And that, yeah, and we'll talk about that because that's a legislative authority.
Right.
You are not a legislative group. You
Right.
are an advisory group to the council. And you do not adopt the city's regulations. You will recommend to the council, but ultimately the council, who's elected by the community at wide, has a responsibility to set up the city's rules and regulations. So this Planning and Community Design Commission that's here tonight is the advisory body serving the city council. It's specifically delegated some authority by the council. The only approvals that they can do outright on their own is if a use is permitted by right. But if a use is a special permit, then that changes. Then all the commission here is playing the role of an advisory group and forwarding a recommendation to the city council. And I know it sounds somewhat the same, but I just want to go through that process and hopefully there is some clarity in there. Now, let's talk about the zoning district, the COR district, which is a majority of the Olive Boulevard corridor. There are some segments that we've created some new commercial districts, and then there are some segments where we have like Emmanuel Lutheran that they're zoned under a public activity district. But most of the Olive Corridor is under the COR designation. The COR was adopted by the city council and it's under our zoning regulations, which are chapter 400 of the municipal code. The COR district is one of 4 zoning districts permitting commercial activity and all of that. Other districts are like the light industrial district, the MU district, and the CC City Center district. The COR has identified uses that are permitted by right and uses that are permitted by special permit. Those uses again are adopted by the council. So if the use is on the list that's noted, it's either going to say it's done by right or it's done by special permit. If it's not, then there are procedures where it has to be identified, and then it may require some changes to the code in this process. Dispensaries, especially medical dispensaries, were permitted by right in the COR district a couple of years ago, meaning that if somebody were coming in to occupy this facility, they would be going straight to the building permit process in there. But that was changed back in November, I believe, in which the city created a new chapter called Chapter 450 that solely dealt with medical dispensaries or medical marijuana facilities, including dispensaries, and noted that The dispensaries would be permitted by special permit, not by right, but by special permit in non-residential districts. So they maintain consistency that they were permitted in the COR, but changed the classification from permitted by right to special permit. What that does again is all of a sudden the application process changes. Instead of going straight to the permitting, they can't. They have to now go to the commission for a recommendation and then to council for their final approval. But what is the special permit? Well, the special permit is a process that's adopted by the city council under chapter 400 zoning regulation. There are specific cues and things that the commission needs to take into consideration and report back to the council. So it's not like you have a white chalkboard to come up with things. There are specific items that you need to address in that process. And generally staff provides that information to the commission, and then discussions go as how those are being addressed, how they're not, how they're mitigated, and then whether they are ever either fully resolved, partially resolved, or just can't be resolved in there. And then the recommendations again is forwarded to the council. Those standards are under chapter 400, 1223. They are pretty broad and they're not very complicated. They're very general in terms of things that the commission has to look at, like traffic, landscaping, buffering, screening in there. Again, in a special permit process, if the commission has to make a recommendation within 120-day period. If it doesn't make a recommendation within 120 days, it automatically goes to the council with a motion to approve, with a recommendation to approve. And this is pretty standard in all communities. This is not anything unique to all of that in there. Now, the petitioner always can express or request an extension or so, but again, the commission has to act within 120 days. They don't get the choice. In there. The council, again, gets the recommendation, hosts a public hearing, and then has final action in this process. The council, as the city, reserves full discretion to deny or revoke based on findings the use is unsuitable or incompatible with its surroundings. The council is not beholden to the same conditions that this commission is. They have the in-say, and it's up to them to make that decision. But note, I mean, the whole process is set up so they're getting a commission, which I'll call it like the expertise recommendation in there. So we'll go from that. So the next thing is, based on the information I heard from the last meeting, is the difference between principles and values. And I'm going to give you the perspective from a planning professional, because in no way am I an expert on principles and values. And there are people here in Olivet that far outrank me in degrees and expertise on this issue. But in general, from a planning perspective, the principles are the rules or laws that are permanent. They're unchanging and they're universal in nature. They give me the direction of what I have to work with. And I don't get the choice of making Carlos's decisions. I have to make these decisions, and they're generally as clear as possible or as black and white as possible. 10 feet, 5 feet, yes, no, things of that nature. Chapter 400, our zoning regulations is what we call are codified to express the principles for land use development in there. And then the role of the commission is to oversee development consistent with chapter 400 zoning regulations. They also don't get the decision to make up or put in any additional regulations above and beyond those that the council has adopted in that process. There are always, what I'm going to call values, and those are internal and subjective. I have personal values and I have professional values, and they come in conflict a lot. But those are things that values impact policy decisions. And I talked about the comprehensive plan and the kickoff coming up, because that's where we look at to see what we can aspire to or what we want to be. And then we try to codify that into principles in terms of how that is to be done in an equitable way for all sides or all parties. Values impact policy decisions. Policy decisions are done through the legislative bodies such as the city council. Legislative decisions set the principles that staff and boards work under. I just wanted to kind of note those, to give a background both to the commission, the audience and on Zoom of what we're going through and what we're reviewing. And there. So given that, the next step was from our January meeting, introducing the petition to the commission, introducing the petitioner to the commission, being able to hear the discussion between the commission and the petitioner, and then the commission opening it up for public comments and listening to what the comments that the residents, both near the site and within our community, had to say in there. And then it's my role to put all that information together for the commission and then come back to the commission to have a discussion. Is this what you heard? Is this what do we think we have it all inclusive? They will give me feedback, and then it's up to the chairman if there's any other additional information they want to have in there. And then I go back with the petitioner who's here today to start talking about that. Here are things that we can address. The petitioner right now is waiting for me to give him that direction. Now, the petitioner was also here at the last meeting and heard comments and listened to some of the concerns to the concerns that were expressed at that last meeting, and has done some changes in the I'll note that in there. But we're starting the process, and we'll see within our next meeting on February 16th how far we've come, and then it's up to the commission. Again, the commission is under a clock, but we're in the early process of that clock. In there. So now, Chairman, if I can go and identify, the comments noted from the January 19th meeting, and I tried to kind of codify them and then create a miscellaneous category. No disrespect to the term miscellaneous, because they're all very important comments. They were very productive comments that we heard from the public, and we are now working with department staff to be able to comment, address, and advise on these issues, and then also to hear, if they're the commission's thoughts. Is it all inclusive? And then if there's others that you'd like to add. So I broke it down into the principles being that there was concerns about crime, safety, traffic, and then image and identity. And that those had the greatest categories within each. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're up here on the dais and on your monitor. If you'd like me to do so, I will. And then there were other comments and concerns regarding the impact of property value, the impact to health, mental health impacts and exposure, impact to adolescents and children, that this is a revenue grab, that the notification process wasn't sufficient, the validity of the voter support, and then Amendment 3, and what about the ballot opportunities that are noted in there. And I do want to reference that before the end of my presentation here. So here are the items in there. Again, there are some things that Chapter 400 does not address from its principal perspectives. The issues regarding mental health, while I believe are important things to consider, the code doesn't necessarily define that, and that's difficult to do. But there are issues that I think the commission should take into account, be sensitive to, and also forward to the council that these items were noted. We heard that from our residents. We know that in that process. It is ultimately the council that sets with the policy of where, how we best address these types of issues and concerns. And again, the comprehensive plan process is a good means to start talking or starting that or having that discussion. I should say start. And so I apologize about that. These items are here. I haven't had a chance to share the list with the petitioner, but again, he was at the meeting. He had noted that some things had already been changed in terms of the overall site plan, and they're working on the additional information for the commission. Outside of that, I do want to comment about Amendment 3 and the ballot and what this commission can do, given that under Amendment 3, the voters of the municipality can petition to place ballot measure on I think the term is general election, which is the presidential election. But that, of course, doesn't occur till November 2024 to prohibit adult use recreational marijuana dispensaries, not dispensaries as a whole, just the adult use in there. And whether this commission has any authority to not take any action or impose some type of moratorium, it's a common term that's put in place. And the city attorney has responded in a memo that's included in your packet to say that no, it is in his opinion, it does not. So I do want to note that, and that was a comment that I believe one of the members had requested we get from the attorney. That, Chairman, if there's anything else, again, this is your first look at the full list items in there, and then
No, I think this is quite a comprehensive list, and I think that's it's great to see that in writing and on print and up there, because coming up or brainstorming what my thoughts were, I missed some of these too. So this is a great reminder for it all. So, does anybody have any questions specific? Go ahead, Carol.
Of course, a couple of the comments related to schools in the vicinity, and we were going to check on the definition of schools and whether these will qualify. Is that something that we were able to follow up on?
is not a issue that would impact this petition
Okay.
in there in terms of the method of measurement that's taken place, that would be taking place. I will note that it was very vague in there, and I think there was some good information that was brought forward of how it was specific to the core academy, how the core academy would be classified. From my end, when they acquired or started leasing the facility back at 2017, under the existing zoning, and they still have that zoning, a school is not permitted in the COR district. So they came in as an educational service, providing services for people in the autism spectrum in there. And they've been a really good resident of all of that. There. So we never took the position or viewed them as a school. And there's different things, because all schools within the city of Olivet should be zoned or are required to be zoned a PA public activity district. And to be a PA district, you need 3 acres. And again, there's not 3 acres back there in there. And it's a building that's kind of set far back that along a commercial corridor that trying to find viable uses is difficult, in there. So it's trying to work with the petitioners to go in there. Their information provided was educational services. They provide assistance and services in there. And that's from the zoning side. From the building code side too, that also gave them some leeway in terms of how the building operations and permitting review are set, because institutional uses, educational uses through the building code are much more stringent than the standard mercantile or office type of building. So I did have a concern in there under Amendment 3, as opposed to, I think it was Amendment 2 that was a couple of years back. The old amendment did not state, it just said that you need to be 1,000 feet. Amendment 3 specifically states that how to measure that 1,000 feet. And it has to be in terms of how, and I'm summarizing or paraphrasing it, and it would be, if I were to walk to that site in a public way or without trespassing, how many feet is that? And it's over 1,200 feet from the property line of this site. So that'd be a little just off of the Dolores Olive corner. If I were to get to the site as a crow flies, I guess is the term, I was 880 something feet. So there was a concern. Amendment 3 clarifies how it has to be done in there, and that's part of the constitutional amendment. It's not, it's not our choice in setting the method of measurement. So it does come out to, I believe the final number was 1,200 and something. And then just in case, I even went, well, what if I, I can walk on any commercial property because in essence, it is public. So if ignoring any fences and topography, you know, could I get to the Corps Academy from this site, you know, faster than having to walk down to Olive and then go south? And that too came out over 1,000 feet. That was it was almost close to 1,100 feet in there. But I know that there would have been some barriers that would have prevented me, at least me, of trying to get over and get across to the site safely. So long story short, it took some pressure off of me of bringing that, you know, making that decision with the Corps Academy. They're a good resident and a good business, and they provide a good service. And I know they had been engaged and talked to, and we did talk to them and did welcome, you know, if there are concerns or things that we want to try to address in this process, and there was not any comments.
Other questions, comments?
One more. Carlos, if amended 3, where we go to the general election and that passes, that we do not allow adult use, what happens if we approve this measure?
Well, there's 2 things, and I'm gonna then go above my head. But the first is, again, the intent of the ballot is that you can restrict adult use recreational marijuana. So the medical marijuana dispensary can continue to operate. Now that's becomes a choice or decision by the operator. And you know, they could stay. It doesn't mean that they have to leave or anything like that. And then I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add on regarding to Amendment 3, and if it were to pass to prohibit adult use recreational marijuana, what that leads to the.
This is really on the developer on what would happen if that would pass. They would have to either come into compliance, or, I mean, I think we're getting kind of further into imagining what might happen. It's not strictly spelled out in the amendment.
Good questions. Anyone else? Alyssa, were you going to summarize some of the changes that occurred, or are we going to let the petitioner?
I'll let the petitioner, because real quickly, those were initiated before I had, you know, this list put together, and I, you know, and the list that I had heard from other residents discussing and note, but I don't want to give the impression like that this is it, you know, like we changed it, and I don't believe that that's their intent. One of the significant things that they did, but again, I'm still saying that I'm still reviewing this, you know, is that they flipped the building. They flipped the interior of the building. And this is before a discussion happened here and other discussions I have heard in there. And it's one step, it's a positive step forward, but still, we still have to review it. From my perspective as a planner, what that does is, again, concerns about traffic. Doesn't resolve the traffic issues on Dolores, especially along Olive. I mean, that, you know, we still got to look at that further. But what it does is that the retail portion or the commercial portion and the concerns about parking and all that, it pushes it to the east side. The east side is where I have the cross-access easement with the Shops at Price crossing. The east side is where there are opportunities for maybe some shared parking, you know, in different hours and things of that nature. So, you know, I can't speak for the petitioner if it was something that they, you know, they picked up from trying to address some of the comments from the commission and the public on the 19th, or maybe it just didn't work and they had to turn it around. You know, which I don't think, but again, it's moving in a direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, great.
That also provided an opportunity, I think, to pick up a little bit of more parking in the process and in there. And I think it also opens some more opportunities to try to offer the Dolores Avenue component of it. But we'll continue to review that.
Okay, good. So that being, go ahead.
Yeah, so, kind of while we're talking about this cross access, do we know what the change in grade is between the two parking lots? here?
Yeah, as you get further south, it gets pretty significant.
Yeah.
And we have to work within the drive lanes in there, and then there's a utility pole that's like smack in the middle where you'd like to get that access in there, but they're gonna have to work that out and create the the necessary slope to do so. I think it can be done as you go further south, where they have the blue arrow here on the slide. It's over 3 feet difference. As you head towards Olive, it does settle some. And I think this can be done. It might be similar to when you get into the shops at Price Crossing from Price. You have to go
Yeah,
up that slope because of the MSD that's right in the middle.
Go ahead, Karen.
Carlos, one of the questions and comments that we got last time related to the traffic and parking on Dolores. Are there mitigation measures that we can take that may be more effective than?
I talked
just
to
putting
Chief
some arbitrary signs
Andresti,
up.
and I'd rather have her kind of address some of those at our next meeting. And look, I know they're familiar with all the signage and some of the current parking issues in there. We've been having to address some issues because there's 3 homes being constructed at the end of Dolores, and then 2 more at the end of Kenneth, and these streets are narrower than the typical street. That's looking at it from curb to curb, not necessarily right away. So I know when we had the full out crews to do the cement pourings for the 3 homes, we had issues. I know we've had issues with on Kenneth, and we talked to the developer about providing the proper spacing, but the street's narrow. And so again, that kind of, it's going to take some creativity.
Some signs that say residential parking only, is that some options?
It's something we can talk with the chief
Yeah.
and take a look at. Again,
Yeah, okay. Or some other signage on the
Mhm.
property saying, kind of pointing them to the overflow area, for additional parking.
And I do want to note just in there, because I did take a look at the previous business licenses, and if the 2 users, the previous users at their peak probably had 8 at Turek, 5 at one of the, I think it was Emirates Health in there, and then they had 2 subtenants that had offices in there. So it was somewhere between 13 to 15 identified as workers in there. And the reason we keep track of the number of workers, or I'm going to use the term occupants within the building, is that's how our business license fee is based. They pay $5 for each in there, so as part of the base fee. So it's information we try to verify, make sure that we're getting the full counts in there. It also helps to know our economics and our employment data in there. So that's where we looked at. So there was some, listening to the audio from the other meeting, they did note, starting with 20, going up to 30 to 35. But it does state that ultimately the goal is to have 7 or 8 employees working at any given time. That doesn't necessarily, I'm not trying to come out with an excuse or anything like that. I'm just noting, those are the numbers in there. So they're comparable to what Turek had on one half of the building. But then you need to accommodate for the people, the retail customer component, because the other 2 may have not had the, many people or walk-ins that you generally would with a mercantile type of use. I also want to note that he had solicited some hours of operation starting at 10 a.m. because there was concerns about morning, and there still are concerns about afternoon in there, as opposed to starting in the periods of like when the school bus is out there for AM, on it.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
I had one other question, which may not directly relate, but all of it has a no smoking ordinance, correct?
It's my understanding, yes.
Okay, would smoking marijuana indoors, let's say at a restaurant or at the dispensary, which, as you mentioned, is a semi-public kind of place, is that covered under the smoking ordinance?
Yes, my understanding is that, and the council, I believe, has gone through the first reading or it's being introduced to the council. That we have smoking is prohibited in public spaces. So there, you can't be walking on the sidewalk smoking. And then you can't walk out of this building and be smoking, and you can't walk out of Sugar Fire and be smoking. You can create and identify designated places. And again, these public places include our parks.
Restricts the smoking of marijuana. So it works in tandem with that. I don't think they'd be able to smoke within the dispensary.
Thank you.
Carlos, appreciate that. Any other questions or comments for Carlos? That being said, I think maybe we're ready to hear from the petitioner.
Thank you. My name is Neil Miner. My business address is 9270 Olive Boulevard. At the last meeting, we heard lots of good comments, lots of good feedback. A lot of it was legitimate concerns from people. We did, in fact, make the switch of the building to move the customer entrance to the east side so that it wouldn't be on the side of Dolores Avenue where the bus stop is, so that there wouldn't be the opportunity for kids to interact with customers coming out of the dispensary carrying their products. And the benefit was we also gained one additional parking spot by redesigning it that way. I think what I didn't get an opportunity to say last time was a little bit about our company, and that our executive team has operated in 12 different states, managing 45 different dispensary licenses. Never in the history of any of the companies that our executives have been involved in have we had compliance issues. Have we ever had a license suspended or revoked? Never had crime issues at our dispensaries. Some attempted break-ins, but no entrance was ever gained into our facility. We are a group of professionals who are running a professional business here. We're not just trying to come in and throw some weed in a building and hope people buys it. This is a business, and this is professionally what we do. I think some of the issues that were brought up are things that, they're outside the scope of what we can do in designing our facility, no matter where it's located at. You just mentioned the smoking, and not only is it illegal through state statute to smoke marijuana in public, it's illegal to consume any type of marijuana in a public place, whether it's an edible or a gummy or an infused drink or any of that. It cannot happen in a public place. The intent is that people will consume whatever they purchase in their home or at a private club. So as we continue working through this, my latest submission to Carlos, which just came yesterday, was the revised site plan and also a landscaping plan. So I know he hasn't had an opportunity to review all that and provide feedback on it. I think one of the next things that people would probably like to see is an exterior rendering of what the building is going to look like. We plan on making extensive improvements to the exterior of the building, which would improve Olive Boulevard corridor. And really just the site in total. And someone also asked the question about the grade where the pass-through is. Dan is here. He's our site engineer who's doing this. He can probably answer that question a lot better than I can. If you stand in that parking lot, you can see at the north end, our parking lot is actually higher than the other side. But as you get towards the south side, it is pretty steep. He looked at the utility poles, the trees that are there. and tried to find the flattest space that he could to connect the two parking lots. And also going into a drive lane into the connecting parking lot. You haven't had an opportunity. After the last time I was here, I was invited to come and do a presentation to the Economic Development Commission in Olivet. And it was educational only. They weren't giving any recommendations or giving any feedback, but it's on video. You can watch the video. I'm not paraphrasing what they said. They said for the city of Olivet that this is a no-brainer. This is the highest and best use of this property at this location right now. And you
And I
know,
think, again, that they were there just to kind of get engaged in the business component of.
I agree. I
industry.
agree. They weren't saying that they would love to see this business here. They were saying from a financial and economic standpoint that it would be the highest and best use of this property if they were making a recommendation.
If you don't mind.
Yes.
Just so we can clarify.
I just want to be clear on that. I don't believe that was what the EDC said, and I would also say they really weren't asked to comment on this for this meeting. So I would, with all due respect, I would request that the PCDC not take any of that into consideration.
Fair enough. That's what I heard, but fair enough. So with all that being said, do you have any direct questions for me?
Does anybody on the commission members have any direct questions? Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, so I appreciate you had your expected hours of operation on there. What do you see being your busiest times of day, or more light, or is it more of a steady stream throughout the day? What is it?
Our director of retail was here. He could answer that question right off the top of his head. It's generally later in the evening or the busiest hours after people get off work. At our other dispensaries, those are the busiest hours.
And I know we're gonna see a visualization of kind of what you plan to do on the outside and the extensive. Can you generally speak about it, just overall? I mean, are we talking just paint job and small signage? You talking, drastic change on the outside? Just, do you have a sense, or is it too early?
It would, a lot of the wood siding is going to have to be replaced. We're not going to replace all of the wooden siding. We're going to paint it. And then we would paint the trim. We would have some exterior signage. There's quite a few windows on that building that present a little bit of a security concern. So our plan with the windows, and additionally, it's under state law, you cannot be able to see inside of a dispensary from a public right of way. You can't be able to view marijuana products, or signs that depict smoke or leaves or cannabis of any type. So our plan is to cover the windows, and we're going to cover those with sheet metal that has designs etched in it, and secure them to the inside of the building so that that you can't see into the building from the public right of way.
And do you know about like other exterior signs, like on the building or on the corner or anything like that? Or
We would like to be able to have a marquee sign on the corner if that fits. Additionally, there are skylights, as you can see in that picture right there on the roof. We think that those might pose an attraction to someone if they were thinking about breaking in. And so that is where we would have signs covering those windows and the skylights as well. Inside, we're going to completely cover up the skylight so that if someone tried to break in through a window, they wouldn't get anywhere, but we're just going to cover them with signs to prevent that.
Have you seen our signage ordinance and restrictions?
Yes.
With those? Okay, good. I have a couple questions, and that's, with the overflow parking lot, where do you envision people walking from that overflow up to the store? Is it going to be through the roadway, or is there going to be a sidewalk, or,
You're talking about for our employees to,
employees or customers?
so I don't know where customers are going to park. If the parking lot is full, I'm not sure where they will park. I'm guessing that they would probably try to go to the east into the shopping center. For our employees, We have several different people that we've been talking to about leasing parking spots. I think we're close to an agreement, but until we have that in place, I won't say what that is. But the employees would just use the sidewalk to get to work, and it wouldn't be that far.
Okay, so go back up to Olive, take the sidewalk and come back down, so they wouldn't be walking up and down the ramp? Or would there be a sidewalk? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So where they would be parking, that parking lot connects to Olive, and so they would walk up to the sidewalk that runs along Olive, and then
Oh, but you don't right now know where that spot's gonna be.
have a pretty good idea.
Okay, but you're not, right now, you
No,
don't
I-
have it finalized. I
Correct.
understood. Okay, well, I'm thinking if it's gonna be used for overflow, parking, potentially for retail customers. There's gotta be a safe way for those people to, get up to this.
So if somebody were to park in the shopping center, they probably would walk up the ramp to access the facility. I can't tell them they can't do that, but
No,
that would be the shortest distance, and they probably would end up doing that.
that might pose as an obstacle for, or a hazard for the pedestrian.
If it would make for a safer location to have a sidewalk or a walking path next to the pass through, that wouldn't be that difficult to implement that as well.
Okay. Um, and I have some more questions, and it's, you talked about, kind of the restrictions, that are in place, by the legislative, we can't, no smoking is allowed. Are there any procedures, that you guys have in place to kind of monitor the grounds outside the store? Just to verify kind of our customers following those, those rules? Or is that strictly being handled by Olivet's police force?
So we do have procedures in place for just about every aspect of the operations, and that does include monitoring the exterior of the building. We do have cameras that monitor the complete exterior of the building. We have a security staff who monitors those cameras, all during business hours. If we don't want our customers to be parking on Dolores Avenue. That's going to create more traffic, and if being the business that borders Dolores, if we need to be the ones to petition for no parking signs, then we would be happy to do that. Whether or not our staff or our security are going to physically come out and ask someone to move their car off Dolores Drive, I don't know that we would be doing that. But on our property, we do monitor the grounds during all business hours.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Carol.
No. So will you have security in terms of the building? Security force, just to help monitor the.
Yes,
what's
we do
going
have
on
a,
inside? Okay.
we do have someone at our check-in entrance who is trained in security procedures. And they are unarmed.
I was wondering. What are you thinking about around the perimeter? There's some fencing up there now. That borders along the sidewalk along Olive. But now that you face the building, are you gonna have are you proposing any fencing?
Currently, we are not proposing any fencing. I've had several conversations with Carlos about the fence on the south side. That property owner prefers to leave it as is. If we could leave it as is and just clean it up and improve the appearance of it, that's what we would prefer to do. If we're told that we have to put in a new fence, then we could do that as well. Along the east side, there's kind of like an old metal fence that probably would be removed completely, especially since we're going to be doing some work over there. And along the north side that faces Olive, I think the fence that's there looks nice, and I'm not proposing that we're going to change that fence.
So what about the west side? And then, what's the remaining piece that's on the north side?
So
The
there,
northwest corner.
That's addressed in our landscape plan. There would not be a fence along there, but there would be some shrubs planted in that green space. There's not very much green space there either. But we have tried to comply with the landscape plan by planting shrubs in that area.
You know, in terms of building the passway to, you know, the shopping center, do you already have alignment, I assume, with the ownership there? And that I wasn't sure, Carlos, if that's a requirement. You're building like kind of a ramp down in there. That is required to get their alignment, or how does that work?
Yeah, we secured a cross-access easement through Shops Crossing, but we made sure when we did that, it was flexible to move along that property line. Ultimately, they'll probably be looking, you know, they would need to coordinate that with the owner, the adjacent owner, and how that impacts their parking. Right now, it's set so that the stalls that are up perpendicular to Olive on the Shops at Christ Crossing wouldn't be impeded, and it would be an extension of that north drive aisle where the Sugar Fire van usually parks up at that corner. And then again, right in that area, you know, where it is the ideal center point. And there's a utility pole that runs lines southwards along Dolores, and then there are some trees, some older trees, and they're nothing. I couldn't advise you on their health, but nothing that's really dynamic or anything, but that are going to impede or they're going to have to resolve that.
No concern, I mean, there's still logistics to work out, but no,
Mhm.
no major concerns.
No, and that was something we ensured back in, I guess it was 2004 when the shops development was being put in place.
Okay, any other further questions? Go ahead, Karen.
Outdoor lighting. If you thought about a lighting plan and how that's gonna, what you're thinking about? You know,
So we're waiting on a little, our store has to be lighted on the outside. We have to have some security because the cameras have to be able to see up to 20 feet from the exterior of the building. We're waiting on a little bit of direction, I guess, on what our lumens should be, and we don't want anything to be seeping into residential areas from the lights on the building. We do work with a professional security company, and they install all of our cameras and alarms and motion detectors, and they also install the lights. And so, you know, when we're ready to move forward with that, we'll have them design something. We'll present it to this group and get some feedback on what's acceptable and not acceptable.
I think we'll be curious about what is the hue or
The color.
the color,
Okay.
of it as well, because we did have a really interesting presentation that was given to us a few sessions before, talking about specifically with security, that some of the very bright lights, it's the perception that that's better for security, but it also creates a lot of shadows and it's difficult to see. So having the warmer hues is almost better, from, making sure you don't create shadows. So
Sure.
FYI.
Thank you.
I am still a little concerned about, how that walkway, using potentially that overflow parking lot on the east side. I'm a little concerned about the fencing, or, kind of other areas, ways to restrict it. But I do think flipping the building, so it faces is a great leap forward in that regard. And I'm very glad to see that. I think that's good. I am going to be concerned about, the signage and stuff and how that is done. And so I do think to take a look at that list of the residents' concerns, and see if there's other areas or ways that we can mitigate some of those concerns,
Sure.
if it can be done, with some of those things. Was there any other questions or clarifications at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'm curious with your civil person, if he could just kind of come in and kind of talk about that slope real quick, going up there.
Good evening. Dan Kozatek, Civil and Environmental Consultants or CEC. 3000 Little Hills Expressway, St. Charles is my office. Happy to talk about anything related to the civil plan. It's specific to that slope. It's about 1.5 feet right now where it's drawn in the existing parking lot going from west to east into that retail drive lane, which isn't too bad. It is a slope, but it's not too steep to get around and circumnavigate traffic in both directions there.
Good, good.
And there is opportunity to shift it a foot or two here and there. We find this location to be the best for everything you have already stated, to try to thread the needle between some decent sized trees. We will have to move one utility pole,
Right.
because that is right in the middle. But our landscape plan that you see further in the packet there shows us replanting with some new trees and bushes along that edge to take into account the change.
And we currently don't have that landscaping plan in front of us right
It's
now.
part of your.
It-
packet of information. And again,
Just
that
came
was
through
last night.
yesterday, so
Okay,
prepared by our landscape architect.
great, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I don't see it.
No. It should be.
I've got a copy if you want to flip through it here,
I'd
you're
love to
welcome.
take a look at it, if you don't mind.
No, but I can pull it up. And again, Chairman, without it, review.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Where was the existing utility pole?
It's not shown on that sheet because it's shown removed, but it's almost identical in the middle of the drive lane there. And it's, when I say utility pole, it's a street light pole that's facing the retail side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is shown on the survey, which there's another sheet
Okay,
in that set that probably shows it better.
In the survey sheet, you'll see it right centered in the gray apron of it.
There's one tree that's removed. And then the pole will be.
Yeah, I was
relocated.
just confused because, yeah, it's called out as a light fixture.
Yeah.
So if I'm reading this correctly, you're putting junipers all along the south side
Yes,
by the fence.
yes. So new trees along that fence, we're proposing to keep the fence, but a tight knit spacing to match the city's landscape code. We're trying to fill up the green space we have available. So there's new trees, landscaping along the east side and south side and west for that matter. In the available on-site green space.
go ahead, Carol, I'm sorry.
Something. So you're saying that you think you need 3 access points to the site? And one off Dolores and one on the other side as well?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, from an access standpoint, we want to be able to provide access in all directions. And part of the real reason to keep the entrance on Olive is from hearing from neighbors and city staff to try to minimize the amount of traffic that's on Dolores. So we want to be able to allow traffic to come from Olive directly into the site and not force all the traffic onto Dolores on that end.
well, I'm wondering if that's the case, do you really need to address onto Dolores as well?
Yes, what we're proposing here in this plan is to change the connection or the exit point on Olive and make it an entrance only. So you wouldn't be allowed to exit. We would sign it. It's shown on the site plan. It's a small note, but no exit allowed, do not enter. So we need a full access point directly to Olive and not just to the retail neighboring lot.
Carlos, it seems to me that this is one of those difficulties where one tries to minimize turning movements on Olive at the same time. We don't want to. We should also try to minimize impacts on the neighborhood. And I don't know if there's a way how it might work if we close the divide and allow full access on Olive. Would that be within the plan that we have, or is, oh,
It's something that the commission consider, but I'd have some reservations in terms of that. And I'll note a couple of reasons. I'm open to the idea, and it may be, that we look for some assistance from a traffic engineering perspective or so. This is one of those, somebody's decision that led to an access point on Olive Boulevard right next to a street. Which came first, I am not sure. The property across also has access onto Dolores, so decisions were made to, provide access to commercial properties on Dolores, and I think those are good planning decisions. The one on Olive is unique. I don't know if that's a relic or so. I sympathize with Dolores and the traffic, the existing traffic movement, because they're narrow streets. They're substandard. There's no cul-de-sac. And we're seeing some density increases in reinvestment in there, and it's difficult. I'm not sure exactly how many homes are off Dolores and Kenneth. I venture to say 30 plus maybe or so, and that maybe they generate 4 trips a day, so that's 120 vehicle trips, and it's probably higher than that. Keep in mind, there are 32,000 vehicle trips on Olive Boulevard. And gotta weigh the two and be consider the extent of the bigger issue. And this, I wish there was a way to relocate the Olive Boulevard entrance to the east, but the grades don't work there. I do strongly believe that, and based on the principles of our traffic management plan, our comprehensive plan, is to control access on Olive, to minimize the right-ins, right-out, or capitalize on right-ins, right-outs, and capitalize on cross-access easements. And that's what we did back in 2004, and it paid off, providing that access. Is that sufficient to close the one on Dolores? I'm sure that's a big impact in there, and I think it's something that has to be considered and weighed in terms of not just the impacts on both sides. I think it's worth looking. I'm open to that. I just don't. I don't think there's a good answer, honestly.
I'm afraid you'd say that, but.
Well, it'd be like, you have a corner property and me coming to tell you, you need to turn your driveway the other way. It would be safer.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate. Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I don't see anything about site drainage on here. I don't know if we're there yet, but has that been considered at all? What does that look like?
Yeah, so in the site plan, it is represented by that big blue arrow. That's where the site generally drains to the southeast. What we're proposing in our plan is no change to any impervious coverage, no expansion of the parking lot. We are replanting the green space areas, so there's a zero net differential as it relates to MSC site runoff.
In a situation like this, it wouldn't be going through MSD, to the best of my knowledge, unless they were expanding the parking surface. But there's not room to expand because they need to meet all the other setbacks and maintain that green space. There may be opportunities to create, if there are some drainage concerns, especially from the property on the south, to utilize that green space and that landscaping that they were noting. To, having the right type of planting materials, permeables, soils in there that represent the rain garden of BMP that can be looked at, but there won't be an on-site detention facility built for this. Now, if they were tearing down the structure and starting from scratch.
Questions or comments? Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation and the changes as well. So I think at this point in time, we'll bring on public comments. Okay.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Before, this one. Carlos, I'm glad you have this up because that's what I was going to actually, make sure before we go into public comments is to really just make sure, we do have these highlighted. We're still trying to address, but there's certain things part of this commission that we can address and certain things that we cannot address. So it's, but the idea is to, try to make sure we listen, as well as, consider, what steps we can do to mitigate or address, some of these issues. Carol, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. This is a very complicated issue, no question. And,
Oh, you're my great.
okay, turned on the wrong one. Okay, and there are a lot of things that are just beyond the purview of this particular body. I think Carlos has gone through a lot of that for all of us tonight, and all of us here are volunteers, and just like all of you out there, and so our time that we devote to this body and to these meetings every couple of weeks is pretty precious, just as yours is. And so on behalf of the commission, we ask if you please keep your comments to us and confine them to those things that we can do something about. Things that the state has already made determinations about, or other issues related to dispensary. While they are absolutely important, I'm not meaning to diminish them, I'm just saying there's not necessarily something we can do about it. And we can't do about it when we vote. So I'm just asking to please be sure to focus and narrow your comments and concerns to us tonight. Thank
That
you.
was very well said.
Oh,
Thank you. All right. So that being said, do we remember, I'm going to ask for public comments, but just remember to state your name and address for the record. And, try to keep your comments as concise and as quick as possible. And there will be a 3-minute time limit, per person. So I'm going to take on Mr. Raphael. I think he had his hand up first, so.
Raphael Manson, 809 Newcastle Drive. And I just wanted to, I gave you guys a slide deck on behalf of Clean Air Olivet. You got a few pieces of information from us. I just want to give a few high level points and then just a couple of comments on the specific plan. I see that progress is made. And by the way, thank you to everyone for your time. And Carlos, thank you so much for what you've done. I just wanted to, first of all, if you can go to the second slide, just say, I think it's important to understand that these dispensaries come with problems, lower property values, more crime, traffic, aesthetic issues. With the property values and crime in particular, I just want to kind of point out with professional expertise in the social sciences. I'm a professor at WashU. But there was at the last meeting, there was kind of some claims that, oh, property value is actually positively associated with dispensaries. And then someone said, oh, there's positive and negative studies. And I just want to kind of lay out the literature, not paper by paper, but broadly, all of the studies that show positive correlation of dispensaries with property values comes from one effect. And it's actually the effect we see on this permit, which is the dispensary is trying to move from a less desirable neighborhood to a more desirable neighborhood. And dispensaries like to pick businesses like to pick more desirable neighborhoods to be in. So all the studies that find a positive relationship, they just merely look where are the dispensaries, what's happening, property values, what's happening with crime, everything looks great because they're choosing the locations that look great. The studies that try to control for, hey, what would this property have done otherwise? They show losses. It's about 3-4%. It's in a fairly localized area, but they show that does add up on hundreds of thousands of dollars of homes. 3-4% still matters to people. But it shows a loss of property value and an increase in crime. Yes, and then I just wanted to do a couple specific points. The main idea that Clean Air Olivet would like to look at is to try to block off this area from the neighborhood. That should do a lot for mitigation. I think moving the entrance to the east side is good. But what I would try to do is get more driveway access than just one driveway access point to Price Crossing, maybe 2 lanes worth there, so that could be a main entrance. Block off Dolores. What we would really like, and what I think would mitigate the property value and crime, would be a fence with shrubbing off to the side. And I had one more, because I'm running out of time, but I wanted to get to the picture. With the signage, I do think it's worth just kind of making sure to follow up on the aesthetic. We see a Sunrise dispensary. To me, that's also not something that's going to add to property values here. We see that you can get good signage. I give you the one in the Homestead dispensary in Creve Coeur as more tasteful signage. So I think that the requests that we have are reasonable within the purview and can be affordable and have them run their business as well.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry, man. This gentleman over here had his hand up before, so we'll go him and then you next.
Thank you. Ishan Desai, 9318 Kenneth Place. Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. Carlos and Ms. Sontag, they might have sent you some information. I took a letter on my neighborhood. I got 22 out of 25 homes where people actively live signed up and opposed to the dispensary primarily for its location. There's 32 homes technically, so there's 27 homes right now that you could physically knock on doors. There's 5 houses being built. 2 of those 27 homes are vacant. 3 other houses did not answer when I knocked on the doors. I knocked on everyone's doors and I got everyone's signatures. But there's this unified feeling from talking from all my neighbors that in terms of what the dispensary's concerns are to us are 1, traffic, safety, crime, and all those decisions or issues are all enumerated up there. From the majority of the neighbors, and I know Ms. Wagner, you said that not to bring issues that you have no control about, but for bringing recommendations to a future council meeting, we would really like some idea of some kind of future buffer zone professional, not enough to make it that, hostile to dispensaries as a whole, but some minor variance that says that you can't be immediately adjacent to a residential area because there's all these externalities, especially in this neighborhood, which is so susceptible to, from its narrow streets and from, just so much construction. We're not equipped for this. The site is essentially, it has too many ambitions for too small a space. And it's simply not, it's trying to be jammed in. And with respect to the petitioner, and I totally respect it in terms of business savvy, in terms of capturing the westward traffic flow off I-70 respect. And then plus dispensaries can't be within 1,000 feet of each other. But in terms of this specific site, it's just not, it's not capable of handling it. Now, I also have a little bit of pause with the plan I just saw in terms of how the building is constructed with no west side perimeter fencing. And the fact that the JBL parking lot for the financial services building immediately to the west is always, it's always empty weekdays after, let's say 3-4 p.m. I know because I take my daughter to school back and forth. And then it's always empty on the weekends. That is the issue there, that's their leasing plan. Now you're going to have lots of people walking back and forth across Dolores, which only puts a greater burden on us as people of the community. So going forward, should this go forward, and we naturally don't want it because it doesn't seem like a site equipped for the matter, that how will they deal with this? I mean, at the very minimum, not having a very large fence separating our residential community, which is adjacent to theirs, would be, I think a minimum request. I think, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Schatzkammer Miller, 36 Pricewoods Lane. In 3 minutes, I can't tell you all the disadvantages of having marijuana dispensaries in Olivet. Fortunately, others have. Because my brother died of a drug overdose and other family members have struggled with substance abuse, I'm opposed to any marijuana businesses in Olivet. But for now, I'll address this particular application. The location is inappropriate. The 2 pictures I handed you show the back of 9270 Olive right next to a house. The application mentions a state lighting requirement of 20 feet from the exterior that will certainly impact at least the house next door. The other shows the street as it meets Olive, where there's a school bus stop. Old Bonham, the 5th grade center, and middle school students will be at that bus stop twice a day. Putting a brightly colored business that offers some of its wares in the form of candy and gummies in this location is dangerous. Down the street is Villa Park. Cannabis customers will make purchases, then walk down the street to the park. Although smoking is illegal in Olivet parks, it's unrealistic to expect police to monitor this. This is the only part of the Olivet business corridor that's so close to a park that provides direct access. This illustrates why we previously requested a buffer zone for parks. Traffic is already horrendous in this stretch of Olive due to construction at Olive and Price. Dolores residents had to request a sign to not block their street entrance. I no longer use that intersection at all, even though I live off Price Road. The business owner sees the heavy traffic as good. The residents see it as bad. The city government is obligated to the residents, not the business owner, to provide a safe and peaceable place to live and the ability to move around our city. Despite what's written in the marijuana constitutional amendments, no businesses have an absolute right to locate in Olivet. I appreciate that you want to use the power of the special permit to do your best to protect residents, but you can't do enough to make this location the right spot. We're not obligated to show this business where it can locate, but having driven Olivet often enough, I'm sure there are other locations along Olive or in the light industrial district where there are already adequate fences to protect residents and no houses, parks, or bus stops right next to potential business sites. I'm concerned that other dispensary businesses will follow with applications. How you handle this first one will have great impact on those that follow. Why not wait to see what the people want? Recreational dispensaries can be banned by ballot. Delay all applications for dispensaries until the people can vote. It is not inevitable that Olivet be riddled with these drug businesses. We're launching a new comprehensive plan, and you've invited residents to help guide the city's future. Let's see if that future includes marijuana dispensaries. If one of you lives on Doris or Kenneth and approves of this location, please speak up. I don't live there either, but one of the great things that draws people to Olivet is that we look out for each other. These residents are part of a community that comes together and stands together when something isn't right for any one of us. Ask yourself, if you lived in this neighborhood, would you want this business at the entrance to your street?
Thank you for your comments.
Douglas Travis, I've lived at 1031 Dolores for 53 years. My driveway is within 50 feet of a driveway off of Dolores that they wanted to put in the dispensary. We don't need any more traffic on Dolores. Originally, my concern was traffic. After hearing the presentation tonight, I'm worried about an elevated sign and lighting that's going to light up my living room. We don't need that. We're supposed to be a residential community. I'm not opposed to business, but this does not belong in that location. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, sir.
Jeff Schneider, I live at 9324 Kenneth Place. I'm gonna mirror a lot of what's been said. Again, I agree that the site specifically is not geared towards what is the petitioner wants it to be, which is a high volume retail space. If it was the medical marijuana stuff, maybe the lower volume, it fits. This one, they want to increase the sales tremendously. And I'm especially concerned about the design intentionally leaving the access onto Dolores. It being very clearly said that Dolores is inadequate for this. And yet they're gonna basically run everything coming into that parking lot and then exiting on Dolores. So again, it's just not the right space for that. The signage, all of that kind of stuff, again, I would agree if it's done properly, okay. But based on the picture that was shown about what one of their other dispensaries look like, that's totally gaudy, and I can't believe that fits into Olivet's space and plan on that. The crime piece, again, it's not so much will somebody be able to break into that. They may make it like Fort Knox, but anytime a site gets broken into, it's on the news, Olivet, break-ins, crime, that sort of thing. The other piece was the fencing. I find it hard to believe that they'll do fencing on all other sides except for the one where we probably have the biggest concern on here. I don't understand why they can't put a fence, put some shrubbery. The whole idea is to separate it both physically and visually so that that's a business, this is a neighborhood sort of thing. So those are, again, some of my major concerns, especially, as I said, the traffic coming out onto Dolores. It is a pain, and honestly, with the higher volume, I guarantee people are going to turn out onto Dolores rather than turning back into the middle of Price, which is a busy, parking lot there. And it's just a lot of volume where kids, people walk, people come in and cut through Dolores from other areas to get to Villa Park. There's people walking down from outside of our streets because you have direct access over to Villa Park. So you're going to have a lot of cars, pedestrians, and I believe that's a safety concern about people getting hit. And that sort of thing. Thank you.
Lisa Schmidt, 1025 Dolores. I've lived in Olivet 4 years. Previously lived in U City for 15 years, much to the dismay of my cousin, the mayor of U City. I moved to Olivet for the school district, of course. This is my 13-year-old. No, we can't do it. Coffee this morning. No big deal, but that's where it is. So without any kind of protection, that's where the kids stand. Well, elementary and fifth grade center, all together, twice a day.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Dina Henley, 9311 Kenneth. I'm not going to repeat the concerns because I know we've all heard the concerns. And I do want to say if we do move forward with this, that you guys do take those concerns and maybe even some of our suggestions. And I do really appreciate the fact that the petitioner has made, some of those, because turning the entrance to the east side was actually something that I had thought about and spoke to with my neighbors. So we do appreciate that. they are taking some of that into consideration, but we do have other suggestions. From a business standpoint, I know not everything is feasible. I have a huge background with retail, now in healthcare. So I just want to say that if we do move forward with the special permit, that our considerations are taken into, especially with the signage and the lighting and definitely the fencing, being that right in that same picture that she just showed, my daughter is in the background, so, you know, at the bus stop, so I have the same concerns and stuff as well, but we just really want to make sure that our concerns truly are heard and that the petitioner is willing to partner with the neighborhood if this does move forward, because I think that would be in good faith from a business standpoint to this neighborhood and to the city of Olivet.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Roger.
I'm Craig Todd. I live at 7 Heather Hill Lane. And I agree with a lot of the comments that have come up before, but I'll be brief. Just two questions. So one, this facility says they're going to do $2.7 million of business in a year. Maybe in a couple of years, they'll do 5.5. I have the numbers right. They should easily be able to turn that into number of cars based on the point of sale from the cash register. I think if we could get that, that would really quantify the number of cars coming in, because they were just saying, yeah, it's a lot. But we really don't know. And I kept counting. I think there's only 14 spaces in that facility in that drawing. The other question I had is just what happens after those 20 issues that Carlos put up there are addressed or presented. It's presented to you guys. So now somehow you come together and come up with a report or recommendation. I'm wondering if you could just comment how that all comes together. Do you understand what I mean? So
Yeah, because
you're
all
kind of
those
yay or
issues,
nay.
well, I think part of it is a work in progress. You
Okay.
know, and that's when, you know, it's a chance for the petitioner also to hear the comments directly by being here. But then, you know, he's already implemented some changes.
Sure.
And then we'll be discussing with him, once we get more information about like how the building's going to look like, what their proposed signage is, and, you know, things like that. Those are the items that we think about or consider. And I think if you've heard where I was already mentioned before, where we asked questions to the petitioner, where we already were asking questions about the fencing, asking questions about, you know, the lighting issues, you know, things like that. So it's a work in progress as
Okay.
opposed to a specific report, if that makes sense.
So somewhere along that point, at 120 days, you have to have a report, or I should say a recommendation to the council.
Yes.
How does that come together?
Comes together with a proposed, you know, and then
The petitioner will put together a set of plans
Uh-huh.
that hopefully reflect or address the issues and the comments that were noted in there. And again, there's a spectrum of those of being fully addressed, partially addressed, or just can't be addressed in there. The commission, when they hit a point of this is as far as we can go with the set, and they're comfortable to make that recommendation to the council, then they will draft a report that goes to council. And let me explain too, the council and then into the adoption process adopts this through ordinance. So it codifies an agreement to some extent that identifies, you know, this is the approved set of plans, these things are required. It could include, these are the hours of operation, these are the types of signages, and these and issues. And again, as a special permit, the council reserves the right that if anytime if they're not abiding to this agreement, that they have the authority to pull the special permit, but it needs to be justified in that process.
So I think somewhere in there you said that you recommend to the council. So is that a report, or is that?
Yeah, it'll be a written text along with
Oh, okay.
plans.
So then you summarize, hey, they did this, they're in good faith, or no, or there's an impasse here, et cetera. Recommend or we don't recommend, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Stephanie Todd, 7 Heather Hill Lane. I just want to stress that there's a lot of unknowns since this is recreational marijuana and it's just been legalized. And it was documented in the reports that we sent to Carlos. It was early this morning. You guys probably haven't seen them yet about the crime. And so there's been a lot of, it's been documented in the St. Louis area around dispensaries. There was increased crime and the police call it, I think, a lot of nuisance crime. So it's not, so we're not just worried about the dispensary. We're worried about the surrounding area, especially like Dolores and Kenneth. And the reason is there's a lot of cash involved because right now they have to operate on a cash basis. My understanding is they'll have an ATM in the store, but so that attracts criminals because since it's they can't use credit card companies won't take them. So that's why this store is different than a regular retail store. It needs to be, and so I'm glad it's a special permit. But this is crime with medical marijuana. So I would assume it would increase or get worse with recreational, but it's an unknown. And then so they project that the first year they're gonna make $2.7 million and it's gonna go up. That's 52,000 a week. That's 7,400 a day. And I think
That's total revenue to projections, if I clarify, it's not
Yeah.
profits, so
right,
just
right. But
just
yeah,
the dollars. I
yeah.
get it.
So they're gonna sell, $2.7 million worth of goods. And that breaks down to 52,000 a week and 7,400 a day. And I think one of those reports said that the average customer spends about I think it was $109 a day. So $100 a day, you got 74 people going in and out every day. So if you're dumping all those people on Dolores, you've got 75 cars now driving on Dolores, and they're concentrated, they said, in the afternoon, evening hours. What a nightmare for Dolores, and so again, it just doesn't seem, and that's to begin with, and they're expected to double in a few years. So now you've got 150 cars dumping on Dolores. So that's my concern. And so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next person. Right.
And McKnight, 9322 Kenneth. We were doing the numbers from the January 23 Economic Development Commission, the numbers that Neil Miner from Sunrise quoted us. We did those figures, and based on the 5.5 million in revenue, it would be 137 cars a day without that fence. And the number of accidents that are happening at that intersection now, I'm thinking that we're going to have a lot of car accidents that involve children at that intersection. A protective fence would definitely help that, especially a tall protective fence that also blocks some of those light problems. My other concern is we discovered that one of the reasons that Sunrise wants to relocate is because customers did not feel safe in their old locations. So I'm wondering why we're bringing that, and do we have copies of those reports for those other locations? Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Reka Ramanujan, 9700 Bear Green. I'm thankful for all of us to be working together towards what we think will be helpful toward our communities. The only place we differ is in how to best help the community, and I don't want these differences to get in the way of friendships and further community building. Like I've said, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm double board certified in both adult and child psychiatry. I have extensive experience working in adolescent substance abuse. I've been practicing in St. Louis for 12 years, and during that time, I've attempted to treat hundreds of children and teens with cannabis use disorder. Note that I've used the word attempted. I've already explained how difficult it is to treat mental illness once weekly cannabis is in the picture. You've all heard about the effects of cannabis on the growing brain. What I can offer is my expertise on how to minimize harm. I know that no dispensary will sell to anyone under 21. However, most kids are able to get it from 21-year-olds and people older than that who sell it to them. Thank you, Mr. Minor, for proposing the changes that you discussed. I appreciate that you took our concerns to heart. If when we vote in 2024, our citizens decide to allow dispensaries, I would like to request the following, in addition to the measures Mr. Minor proposed. Like we talked about, aesthetically pleasing, appearance that's not gaudy or tacky, minimize any obvious visual clues that it's in fact a dispensary like marijuana leaves, no flashy neon signs or bright colors, no signs advertising, discount sales or specific products or special events, and no illuminated advertising for marijuana products on buildings, doors, windows, or freestanding signs, similar to what we would see on alcohol signs for gas stations. Like I said, lastly, I'm not willing to break up friendships over this, and it would be most unfortunate if science of all things becomes a polarizing issue in our community. Thanks to all of you for listening to our concerns and for having our best interests in mind, and I hope we can come to a final decision in 2024.
Thank you. Anyone else? Getting the crowd and not seeing, oh, go ahead.
I'm the Schneiders at 9324 Kennan. Please speak at the microphone. Sorry, I'm Schneider, 9324 Kennan. And we've been in the neighborhood for 16 years, investing our time and energy, money into raising our kids. We picked Olivet for the school district. We invest our money in taking care of our property and creating a great neighborhood. This is the wrong place. This is the wrong location for this place. There are some kids in the neighborhood. And while for them, it's a business opportunity, and for us, it's our lives. And I think if you ask any one of them if they want this in their neighborhood, they would say no. While 60% of the people who voted to support or legalizing medical marijuana, 0% voted to legalize recreational marijuana, and 0% voted to the dispensary in our neighborhood. This is the wrong location for this place. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, ma'am.
And I note that clapping voids the audio for people online.
Okay, my name's Hillary Davidson, 1029 Dolores. And I decided that I would look through the comprehensive plan just to see how I thought that the dispensary would fit in there. And I did find some places where I thought that it was incongruous. So for example, a branded community is one that delivers a consistent quality of experiences in living, doing business, traveling, working, shopping, recreating. But I don't see that this business is going to enhance the quality of life for residents. I mean, particularly in my neighborhood. Creates an attractive sense of place. I cannot say that I think that this business, no offense, will create an attractive sense of place. Attracts and retains targeted businesses. Was this a targeted business? I'm not saying it's a terrible business. I'm just saying, was this part of the comprehensive plan to have this kind of business? Or no offense, but is it a case of
somebody wants to open a business here and we're gonna get tax revenue, let's open this business. And somebody wants to sell a building. I understand there's a lot of vacant buildings on Olive that do need to be redeveloped. And I understand if I were the owner of the property, I would want to do that. And this does seem like it's a great location. You're going to get all kinds of people from north, north of Olive and all over the place that may come here. So let's see. Just give me a couple of minutes. I don't want to take up. There was also talk about having sort of this be something where the community and the city were deciding together. And I don't know that I see this as that either. And it says balanced community, balanced residential density with the needs of the community, including educational, health, and social requirements, as well as public and nonprofit facilities. So I mean, I don't know that I see that this really fits in with those principles that are outlined in the comprehensive plan. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone. So Carlos, can you check to see if we have anybody online
we
that
do.
has a hand raised?
Okay, if anybody would like to speak online, if you can show your hand. I do have one person, but they're not identified. I'm a little concerned. So I'm going to transfer you over as panelists, but you need to identify yourself and have your video on. Yeah, we'll do that. Excuse me, Chairman.
No worries.
Okay, Zoom user, if you can identify yourself, and then I'll transfer you over.
Sure. Hi, Jason Murray. I live at 9328 Kenneth.
Okay, Mr. Murray, I'm going to transfer you over to panel. Mr. Murray, again, if you can turn on your mic and your video and then introduce yourself and state your address.
Sure. Jason Murray, 9328 Kenneth Place. My wife, 4-year-old son and I live, we moved to Olivet in May. So I just want to thank the PCDC for taking the time to listen. And thank you to Mr. Minor for making the revisions you have. And while I hope this is not approved, if it is, I hope to see some more. So I encourage the PCDC to ideally recommend denying the request as incompatible with the location. Alternatively, if it is approved, I would recommend some thorough analyses and reasonable restrictions so that these potentially negative impacts, which we're all worried about, are mitigated. So one thing that struck me during that initial meeting, which somebody else touched on, was that the petitioners highlighted that 60% of residents support legal recreational marijuana and voted for Amendment 3. And I think that's great. I'm one of those people. But that doesn't mean I want a dispensary or a Dunkin' Donuts or any other similar high traffic business in this particular location, sharing a border with a house, sharing an entrance to a residential street. When my family and I moved to Olivet in May, this particular location for our house was really appealing on the far west of Kenneth, just because it's so unique. It's a quiet residential street with no busy through traffic. So for me, one of the primary issues here isn't whether people like the product that the petitioners are going to be selling. It's in fact, that's the problem. We know people like it. We know it's going to be busy. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is, unlike a healthcare company or a financial advisor, apparently there might be a drive-through window at some point, according to the initial site plan that I saw. I don't know if that's part of the revised site plan, but I think there was a mention of a window being maintained for a drive-through window, if I recall. So, the traffic concerns we've all talked about are heightened here because, as we mentioned, the narrowness of the street and the lack of parking on Dolores and Kenneth. I'm glad we're acknowledging that. I mean, in my experience, if traffic or street parking increases even a little bit, I'm just not sure how anyone, is going to be able to drive down either road, let alone, an emergency vehicle in a life or death situation. I mean, today, if cars are parked on both sides of Kenneth, I can very, very carefully get my small sedan through, there's no way an ambulance or a fire truck can get down to my house on the far west end of Kenneth if there are cars parked on both sides. And if that's exacerbated because of a high traffic business here, it's a safety issue that I think the city needs to look into and consider. So in addition to analyzing that information that Raphael provided about the economic impacts, I think a really careful independent traffic study needs to be conducted before the permit would be considered for approval. And, there's potentially a drive-through window in there. I think that needs to be accounted for as well. So, I guess, if it's approved, I would encourage also the closing of entrances, as a couple of other folks have touched on, from both the west and the north sides of the lot. Therefore, you're only going to have vehicles and pedestrians entering on the east side. I would encourage, continued examination of the widths of the streets. And, if it is allowed to go in, that some stricter parking restrictions beyond a simple no parking sign need to be put into a place to account for the likely increase in traffic. I think
Sir,
a fence.
You got to wrap it up, okay? I've
Oh.
let you over 3 minutes, and so
Okay. Sorry.
if you can wrap it up in a sentence or two, get your final comments in, I'll let you do that. So I don't.
I had about 2 sentences left. So I would just encourage those enhancements, encourage the commission to ask more questions and get more information about the plans for potential drive-through window.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll transfer you back to Again, is there anybody else that's online that would like to speak? There's about 7 attendees. Just show your raise your hand icon. It's usually located at the lower center portion of your Zoom window. And Chairman, at this point, I hadn't seen any, and it doesn't look like anybody else is clicking on.
Okay, great.
All right.
Great. Well, I think those are good comments and appreciate everybody. I do appreciate the people that just, acknowledge rather than keep bringing things up. I mean, that's good. But, like I said, there's certain things that we have control over, certain things that we do not. Okay, so I think Carlos and Carol mentioned it, before. And so, and I appreciate everybody on both sides of this kind of issue being very respectful. It makes for a much better meeting, especially as a reminder, since we're all volunteers, nobody likes to be a punching bag. So we definitely appreciate that.
Chairman, can I note a couple of things just so it's clarified or nobody leaves with any misunderstanding in there. Again, Amendment 3 set up some specific standards. And I think some of those standards address some of the issues that we're talking about, the visual appearance of the structure. And there now we saw 2 structures earlier, one in the rural area and one right there on Ladue. And that was a former bank off of Lindbergh. And yeah, they're completely different in there. I agree. But again, the state does have some standards regarding, logos, flashing signs and things of that nature. Then in addition to, the city of Olivet has its own sign ordinance, and we have a pretty effective sign ordinance to put in place and control in there. So I'll note those. And those standards those are the standards. They're not starting points. Those are the requirements. So I don't want to feel, anybody leave the impression that if they cover the windows, then that's been addressed. But and the second thing is the drive-through. And it's been noted to Mr. Minor, there is a pickup window inside the building. And I think maybe that's what that reference was. But our code right now does not permit a drive-through on this site. They need 80,000 square feet. So I want just to make sure that people understand on those aspects. Then we have design regulations under Chapter 428 that I identify the type of landscaping buffering that taking place in there. I haven't, I don't want to review that site plan until I have time to go through Chapter 428 and see the compliance. So I don't want to comment about that. So I'm not going to say that is it again. And I still want to stress as though that's the starting point. In there, the commission's role here is to take in the concerns and, in terms of the type of use, and then whether just the current rules and regulations is sufficient, or there needs to be a little bit more or more, so, and we will do so as we go through that process. And I think Mr. Minor will work with us and hope to take those into consideration.
Carlos, is there going to be any sort of, traffic study, to discuss and kind of, talk about that volume of work or volume of business compared to the number of cars and, things like that, so we can get a better idea of the impact?
It's something we can talk about internally to see what, if there is, the goal would be, again, this is a commercial corner. I mean, if we want to get an idea in terms of what the daily usage would be and such, to see how that helps incorporate some additional things, that's okay. But I don't think it, I think we'd have to define what we're asking the consultant to provide in there. If we want to look at what are the trips generated by a dispensary, there's a lot of information out there that we can do that in there. But once you start looking at it, we have to look at it holistically of, this is up against the Olive Boulevard corridor in there. This is a substandard street in there. So what are the things that can be mitigated would be what I would be more interested in terms of trying to prohibit or removing any of those aprons. If I had the choice, I would say the apron on Olive is the worst, but when you have access on a state highway, those are difficult to get rid of in there. I think part of it, looking at it holistically and as a community, is that we have some traffic issues and in terms of signalized timing, too many curb cuts along Olive, not controlled intersections. And it may be something that we need to take a broader look at as a community of how to improve the segment between Price and Olivet Executive in there. And maybe there are need for medians and controlling the access points on there. The city's doing some improvements on the north side to help mitigate the traffic volumes from the industrial park. Because again, the initial designs didn't take into account, the turning radiuses of some of those vehicles and conversion of industrial warehouse uses to office type of uses. In there, we've seen the density population of the employment levels increase. So I need to think about it and see what's best, most effective, both for this site and the community as a whole. And I don't, again, I understand the concerns on Dolores. It's a tough street to go in and go out there. And I think I would need to sit down, think about it, put something together, and then share it with the commission and get some direction.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, Carlos. I mean, you're not going to solve it now, but I do. The concerns, because I think the vast majority, unfortunately, we don't have the scope to change. It's not our purview, but the traffic to raise some of the concerns on and off Dolores, you've already mentioned the street concern and a lot of the neighbor concerns, but also it's like an entrance off of Olive, and then right there at the corner, from traffic there where people are coming in, turning right, turning, and accidents and the volume. I do wonder, and like Carol suggested, it may not be possible. Can that entrance be moved? Can it not, and not use Dolores? And then if not, looking at times that someone mentioned about, to avoid times that people are at bus stops possibly, but those are things I think that are potentially in our control to look at. So it's my initial thoughts.
Thank you.
Cause the other thing I was wondering is if there's a way to expand the side entrance on the opposite side of the building and to the entrance on the lower, so that we have Olive entrance and the one entrance on the roof. That having three entrances on this side.
It's something we can take a look at. Again, if it's because of the concern of the volume that is coming in there. The thing is expanding the entrance on the east, regardless of what type of user, if it becomes a retail user that's going to generate more traffic than the previous users that were there that had a good,
People that weren't buying and selling.
correct.
so
They weren't
were-
going in and out, but it was usually in the morning and then in the afternoon, I
Right,
think.
right.
Widening anything more on the east, then we start getting into the same parking issue, and they start losing stalls and taking a look at that. It's something we can take a look at, and maybe that's the product that we asked from the consultant on the benefits of access on Dolores, but looking at it again, what does that do? What does that set?
I mean, I understand there's no way we can close an entrance without having someone in and the other entrances. There it is and bouncing things. Assess which impacts are first ones and choices do we have? I just want to make sure we explore all.
Questions I have, at what point will we expect to see renderings of the buildings to actually see what it's going to look like?
Yes, the next meeting would be on the 16th there. And Mr. Minor, if there was anything else you wanted to provide, if you want to. Just, okay, it would be the 16th.
We'll let him answer it and then we'll repeat it in the microphone so people can hear. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
You don't have to state your name and address again since you're, yeah.
So you asked when we would have the renderings of the exterior of the building. It's something that we're working on right now. I can try to push to have it by the 16th. If we don't have it at that meeting, we would definitely have it at the one after that.
Okay, good.
So we're working on the signage and everything together in one. But we will have more information for you on the 16th for sure.
Okay, good. And if you can incorporate any other, the issues that are brought up,
Sure.
kind of, you can hear it, so that's what some of the areas that we're going to be kind of focusing in, as well.
Okay.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, good. So that being said, I think it was a good productive meeting on this issue. And I think it's time for us to kind of move on to the next agenda item. So appreciate everybody being here. We do ask you, if you're going to have discussions outside, go outside and close the door. Remember, we're still meeting. All right. So thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. We'll move on to new business. Now, it is 9:06. How crucial is this new business, Carlos?
Chairman, it's a very quick one and one I wish we need to improve the process to do so. Basically, there's a pool that is going to be installed at number 3 Downey Lane. You might recall that lot. It's next door to Mr. Brophy and it's the former council member and councilperson Spring property. It's got a sizable backyard. They're putting a pool and a spa. The code right now says that if you exceed 400 square feet, I need to come to the commission. And that's a pretty narrow, short amount. And sometimes it, I can understand in some of the smaller lots, it makes sense, but what they're doing here, I have to bring this to you. I don't have any issues. What they're doing here is compliant with code, is for the surface area that they're creating, and it's going to be an additional 1,200 square feet of surface area. So that takes them into this category where they have to have on-site detention. And they're putting a detention basin right here at this corner, and then it will release on the lower level down here in Downey at a good distance in the front yard to give it plenty of time to permeate before it gets to the street. And it's one of these, I got to bring it to the commission. I hope the commission would consider it. We don't have any issues. They have talked with the adjacent neighbor.
Any issues with drainage there on that land?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'd like to recuse myself on this one. So I grew up on the street and my mom still lives there. I think I'd be more comfortable.
Any drainage issues already with that site or in the neighborhoods or adjacent areas?
In every, it's one of the, it's a higher. Anything closer to the bottom is always on the high hill. In that, and as you collect and go down, it collects more. The city has done improvements on Downey, including placing a lift on the western side, putting a detention basin or inlet on the terminus of Downey. But you know, that water just collects and then it goes further downhill. Between these two neighbors, this house caused a change in the zoning ordinance where we increased the required side yard setback. We don't allow a house to be built that close to a property line anymore. What this does in exchange by picking up some of that roofing area, it actually should improve some of the concerns of the house being so close to the
Good.
property line.
Good. Okay. Carlos, I don't see the actual report. So is there?
No, it was just one of these in terms of showing you in
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Carlos? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Brian.
Motion to approve the site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for the flat work and pool improvements proposed at 3 Downey Lane as presented before Planning and Community Design Commission on February 2nd, 2023, subject to any conditions noted therein.
Motion been made by Brian Lewis. Do I hear a second?
second.
And seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Yes. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Wagner.
I've recused myself.
Oh, it is recused, and Chairman Dragell.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
Okay, then we'll move on to other business and I see meeting minutes.
Yes, you have the set of the last meeting minutes. And therefore your acceptance.
Good. Can someone acknowledge the receipt of these meeting minutes?
Sure.
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to acknowledge to receive the meeting minutes of January 19th, 2023.
So acknowledged. Okay, we'll move on to staff or reports. Carlos?
Again, Ms. Doty will be giving a presentation or is the guest with the speaker in Coffee with the Mayor, encouraging commission members, if you have the opportunity, to attend 8:45 on Wednesday. And that will also begin the kickoff of our comprehensive plan update. The commission, of course, oversees the preparation for the comprehensive plan. 3 members of the commission are part of the what we call an advisory committee that they kind of advise on behalf of the commission. Because I can't have a quorum and you guys have a lot of work and stuff to do. So I believe it's Chairman Dragell, Vice Chairman Wagner, and Mr. Lewis, Commissioner Lewis are on there. Shocking Associates will be reaching out and providing to you the next steps and trying to coordinate a meeting. And then hopefully we'll have the community-wide schedule of events and opportunities for discussion. So, Chairman, that's really the most important thing.
Good. Missy?
A very minimal amount to report. City Council will be getting busy with regards to preparing for the process of interviewing for a new city manager. Ms. Sondag is retiring and moving. So we're beginning that process. Carlos just went over what the next Coffee with the Mayor will be. In 10 years, it's phenomenal what's been achieved in the leadership under Ms. Sondag. And it is time. I'm thrilled with Carlos to be humbled that this will also be my second comprehensive plan go around. So this is exciting. I want to thank each and every one of you for what you do. You did excellent tonight. Thank you so much. And let's just continue moving the city forward and let's see what the next 20 years will bring.
Very good. John, did you have anything you want to add?
No, not tonight.
All right, good. That being said, we'll adjourn at 9:12.
Thank you all.